I'm now 5:16. I'm meteorologist Zach Malonk checking in on Wink Doppler 3X. What you're seeing right now, the first batches of rain from the northern side of this storm now moving in. Notice what you're also seeing. The eye wall is now visible off to our south and west as it's very high in the sky at the center of this hurricane. We will get more of the hurricane in view as we continue throughout the morning, but that's the current view that we're seeing right now on Wink Doppler 3X. Closer to home, here's the rain that's most impactful to us right now. Lee County is seeing the most of this rain across all of Lee County from central parts of Fort Myers through Cape Coral, south through southwest Cape Coral, as well as Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach. If you're still at home, still trying to evacuate this morning, just know you're going to be evacuating through some heavy rain that will be passing by from time to time along our coast. Again, for Lee County, zones A and B are under mandatory evacuations. Here's a look at the latest. Hurricane Milton again right now, a Category 5 menacing hurricane building off to the northeast. Look at that eye wall getting smaller and smaller, which is indicative of strengthening. We have been seeing this hurricane remain at Category 5 strength in this most recent update. Also seeing a pickup in speed, now moving northeast at 14 miles per hour. It was moving northeast at 12 miles per hour at that 2 a.m. update. So a nicer change of pace. If we're going to find one bit of light, it is now picking up in speed quite a bit. Notice how we're watching Hurricane Milton. I came in at 2 a.m. this morning and I drew this line right away. We always do this here at Wink News. We always try and draw the line to see exactly where this could be going. I drew this at the corner and the intersection really of Sarasota County and Charlotte County off towards where that storm was tracking. We now see the storm heading off to more of a northerly track. We just saw that in the last half an hour. That's a good change of pace. We'll try and see if that wobbles all over this line or if it stays north of this line. If it stays north of it, it will be making landfall in Sarasota County late tonight around 1 to 2 a.m. Models are consistent on that. Most of them in Sarasota County, some of them on the Sarasota County, Charlotte County border, more of them heading towards Longboat Key. I'm really thinking that the storm will make landfall near Venice, near Sarasota, most likely towards the Sarasota area late tonight, midnight to 2 a.m. National Hurricane Center still honing in on that area as well. Has Milton making landfall as a Category 4 major hurricane? Again, that's a 5-mile-per-hour update since yesterday at this time. It was going to make landfall as a Category 3. Now forecast to make landfall as a Category 4. Because of all this and because of the impacts, they remain the same. Hurricane warnings in effect for Lee County, Charlotte County, DeSoto County, and Highlands County. Tropical storm warnings in effect, Glades, Hendry, and Collier counties. These warnings are all due to the force of the wind as it moves in. Many of you asking, when do those tropical storm force winds arrive? They arrive as early as 2 p.m. and notice around 5 p.m. today, those tropical storm force winds all over Lee County, Charlotte County, DeSoto County, then moving inland as well. Those hurricane force winds, those arrive later on tonight around 11 p.m. to midnight as that storm moves ashore. Again, if the center of that storm is farther south in the Sarasota County, those hurricane force winds will be farther south as well. And that's my current thinking, is that right now this could shift about 10 to 20 miles south of where the center is currently. Let's break this down even more. Again, today at 3 p.m., that's when those tropical storm force gusts really arrive. By about noon to 3 p.m. today, that's when you should be sheltering in place. Why? Conditions will be getting worse through the rest of the afternoon as well as into the evening. Here's 7 p.m. Wind gusts anywhere from 40 to 60 miles per hour. Here's 9 p.m. Wind gusts anywhere from 50 to 60 miles per hour. As we progress through the night, here's midnight or so. Again, wind gusts anywhere from 75 to 80 miles per hour across Charlotte County, Sarasota County, with the storm making landfall in Sarasota County as well. That could be a little bit farther off towards the south, which will increase those wind gusts throughout the night tonight. Into tomorrow, we're going to see that onshore wind, that west wind, and that's going to be with us near high tide, and that's going to be influencing our tide values all the way through the night as well. So again, bands of rain arriving throughout the day today. The heaviest threat of rain arriving early this afternoon. Tornadoes going to be possible as well throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening hours. And again, that storm making landfall near Sarasota County around midnight to 2 a.m. late tonight into tomorrow morning. We're still watching that threat for a significant storm surge across the coast of southwest Florida. In fact, that storm surge timing gets a little bit later as the storm's arriving a little bit later. Right now, we're going to see that storm surge arrive between first starting the movement around 6 p.m., increasing through the evening hours, highest around midnight to 2 a.m. But keep in mind, high tide is going to be 6 a.m. on Thursday. So keep that in mind that as this storm surge arrives, 8 to 12 feet, Lee County, Charlotte County, 10 to 15 feet, and the Charlotte County coast northward could be arriving closer to that high tide times tomorrow morning between 4, 5, and 6 a.m. High tide Lee County around 5, 6, 7, and 8 a.m. Again, the later arrival of this time can have this water rushing in near high tide times as well. That's not a good thing. That's something we'll be watching here. Not going to be adding any more to the storm surge threat, but still just enhancing that threat is going to be coming our way. We're also watching for a final note that eye wall as it moves onshore could pose a high wind warning later on tonight. You see that white, that is an indicator of the highest winds through Sarasota County, Charlotte County, DeSoto, and Highlands counties later on tonight in through Thursday. With a more in-depth look at our local forecast, what you're seeing right now, let's get over to meteorologist Julian Mejia.
Thanks, Zach. Yeah, I wanted to start off with a close look at that severe weather outlook for Southwest Florida. A level 2 out of 5 for those of us here in southern and eastern portions of Hendry County and Collier County. Majority of Collier at that level 2 out of 5 encompassing Clewiston and portions of the Lake Okeechobee waterfront. And the more important element here is that level 3 out of 5. I mentioned this before. Since I started working here in Southwest Florida, this is the highest so far severe weather outlook that I've seen for our area, that 3 out of 5. Numerous in the way of coverage of potentially severe threats, primarily focused on the risk of tornadoes today into tonight. In the very early morning hours tomorrow. So again, main impacts, tornadoes are our main concern, as well as the damaging winds and the surge along our coastline. But when it comes to that severe weather outlook, it's mainly focused on the tornado risk. So right now, off to a soggy start. You can see definitely the rain coming down on the Fort Myers Skycam, from the Cape Coral Skycam here as well, as we keep up with the widespread rain, the heavy rain at times, as well as the stronger storms and the stronger cells embedded within the wider spread of showers throughout this morning. So we're going to keep that up through the next hour or two, especially as more of this drifts to the north at times. As is typical with tropical systems, we're going to see some lulls and we'll have some quiet spells. We'll have some dry slots. But expect more rain to be on the way, especially as we see band after band after band continue to slide through. Here's towards the later morning and early afternoon when we're likely going to see our next batch and our next band slide on through. And this also does bring with it the amplified tornado threat heading into the early and mid-afternoon, taking us into the evening hours on and off across Southwest Florida. And then later on tonight, our main focus will be the surge at that point as the rain starts to dry up here for most of Southwest Florida heading into the first half of your Thursday. Tornado potential increases steadily from now into the late morning, into the early afternoon, around that moderate 3 out of 5 category, and then continues to just steadily peel off as we head into late tonight, closer to landfall. Now, when it comes to sheltering during a tornado, just reminders that I'll keep bringing up here throughout this morning and throughout today is that you do not want to be in a mobile home. You do not want to be in your vehicle or under an overpass. And so if you find yourself on the road, a tornado warning comes up, your Wink Weather app alerts you, you have to find a gas station, you have to find somewhere to pull off and a structure to take shelter in. Manufactured homes, the second floor of a building, windows, being near windows is not a good idea. You're ideally on the first level of a building, you're in the interior room of your home or building, as far away from windows as possible. Let's jump ahead to your 7-day forecast, tracking much drier conditions on the way in the wake of Milton, in time for those of us that will be recovering after the storm.
Welcome back. It's 4:42. All eyes on Hurricane Milton. I will start by saying our weather is completely quiet. No issues, cool mornings and warm afternoons. But our friends in Florida are getting ready for this major hurricane. It is still a Category 5 this morning. Hurricane hunters are still flying in it, finding that it is still a very strong hurricane. 160-mile-per-hour sustained winds, gusting to 195. The speed of it has sped up. It is now moving at 14 miles per hour. A closer look, though, you can see that well-defined eye is becoming less and less defined, but it is still a powerful hurricane. It will take some time for a Category 5 to lose some of its steam. Now, we have it making landfall later on tonight, still as a Category 4 hurricane, and then making its way through the peninsula peninsula of Florida from Tampa to Orlando as a hurricane, producing strong winds, surge, and heavy flooding rains. And then by tomorrow afternoon, it will be in the Atlantic here and then continuing to weaken as it moves towards Bermuda. It'll bring some gusty winds and rain this weekend, but no longer a hurricane then. Here's a closer look at the landfall track right now. Models have really been honing in on the Sarasota area. Now, this type of track would be a better scenario for Tampa, but remember, the chance of this hurricane following exactly along that path isn't a guarantee. These storms often wobble, and especially this storm, which is getting picked up by upper level winds, it is possible that it gets slung to the north a little bit. So I am not breathing a sigh of relief in Tampa yet. I know models are locking in on the Sarasota area, but it is too close for comfort to let your guard down there in the Tampa Bay area, where they could still see that 15 feet of storm surge. Now, strong winds, yes, coming in with this. Wind gusts over 100 miles an hour right here, closer to where the center makes landfall, but damaging winds all the way up into Orlando, nearly Daytona Beach, Fort Pierce here. In the red area, power outages are likely. Storm surge 10 to 15 feet anywhere near that center or south. That does include some of the hard-hit areas from Hurricane Ian, Port Charlotte, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, all getting ready for a similar surge to what they saw from Ian. And I mean, you know what Ian did to those areas. It was catastrophic as well. So still a very, very serious situation with storm surge for those areas near and just south of the center. Now, the hurricane itself, you can see it spinning away there. It starts to encounter that shear and transition from tropical to non-tropical, but that doesn't really change the impacts. A lot of the rain is going to be on the northern side of Milton as it makes landfall. See your winds gusting nearly 100 miles an hour. And then this is tomorrow or late tonight. All the rain on the north side, dry on the south side, but still the surge coming in. You don't need rain to get winds and storm surge. And then by tomorrow afternoon, it's long gone. Rainfall totals, this is probably an overstated or understated fact right now. We could see some significant flooding on the northern side of that storm. Just like we saw with Francine, where some saw 8 to 12 inches, that could happen across the peninsula of Florida. So Milton's exiting. Here we go. Goodbye. Our weather staying pretty. In fact, I've got a beautiful cool front next week. And this is a real cold front, our strongest one of the season.
Here from the hurricane hunters flying around inside of Milton. We saw a pinhole eye forming overnight last night. That's usually the sign of a rapidly strengthening hurricane, and that's what we got. It is now officially a major hurricane, a Category 3 with winds of 120 miles per hour. So there it goes. You can see the little symbol switch over. This is a loop, and it goes from 1, 2, then eventually to Category 3 strength. And now you can really see this little pinhole eye. That's what's developing overnight last night. That pinhole eye means these winds are really wrapping around and strengthening, and that is what we've been seeing. And now we do have a major hurricane with Milton, 120 mile per hour winds. The pressures have dropped to 954 millibars. Now, some of the modeling suggests this could ramp up to a Category 5 storm. So this is going to become a very powerful system. It already is. And it's going to continue to track off to right now to the east-southeast, but eventually it'll make a northeast turn and head up towards the peninsula of Florida. Now, the official forecast track calls for a Category 4 storm with winds getting up to 145 miles per hour, but it does show some weakening right before landfall because some dry air is likely to get wrapped into it. Unfortunately, though, because it's going to get so strong, it's not going to have enough time to wind down a whole lot. In fact, it'll likely still be at least a Category 3 at landfall. Now, that landfall, the spread on the forecast is still pretty wide, so we're still trying to get some more details on exactly where it's going to make landfall, and that'll be super critical, especially to Tampa Bay. That is really going to be the most critical part of all of this, because this is obviously a major population center, and they haven't been hit by a major hurricane in more than 100 years. And the possibilities of the storm surge in Tampa Bay are pretty epic with this storm. If it makes sort of a path that goes pretty much near Tampa Bay or just to the north of Tampa Bay, they could be seeing storm surge in excess of 12 feet. Now, they saw 6 feet during Helene, and that caused major issues. So double or more is a very real possibility. And once again, there is a lot of population in and around this area that has never experienced a major hurricane. They've been brushed, but they've never taken a direct impact in more, or at least more than 100 years. So folks that are living there have never been through a direct hit of a major hurricane. High rip current risk, that's the only impacts that we'll see our part of the northern Gulf Coast. This front right here, that's going to be pushing on past us later on today. That is what's going to protect us from the storm. The storm can't jump over that cold front, so there's no way it makes a big turn to the north and heads towards us. That will not happen. All right, just not going to happen. It'll hit the west coast of Florida. There's still, once again, a pretty wide spread along the west coast of Florida, but that's where it's headed. Temperatures for us today, it's going to be nice, but it will be hot, near 90 this afternoon. We're out ahead of the front today, so we still get up to around 90 this afternoon. Then this evening, really pleasant. Temperatures dropping back off into the 70s, so a nice night if you got some things to do here after work. And look at this long-range forecast for us. I don't know, kind of a little bit of a guilt complex for us because, once again, another major hurricane making landfall to our neighbors to the east, and here we are. And we're going to have beautiful weather. We're going to kind of glide into fall. It's not like a big dip. It's not like we're going to go off the edge of a temperature cliff here next couple of days. It still stays pretty mild, pretty warm in the afternoons in the mid-80s. The mornings, though, will be super pleasant. The humidity is going to be way down. It is going to be really nice. Then the afternoons will eventually come down to low 80s as well. So kind of like gliding into fall. Beautiful weather, though, for us all week long. Lots of sunshine and really great conditions on our part of the Gulf Coast.
Extreme, catastrophic, life-threatening are all words being used to describe the potential storm surge along Florida's west coast where Milton will make landfall. Water levels could reach 10 to 15 feet above the ground if peak surge occurs during high tide. You cannot survive that. Remember, storm surge is not just a coastal threat, as water can travel several miles inland. Bottom line, if told to evacuate, please do so ASAP. Milton's heavy rain will also add to the flooding potential Wednesday and Thursday. Rain totals will vary widely across the state. 5 to 12 inches will be possible at some isolated higher totals across north central Florida. This will likely lead to flash flooding with the highest threat from Orlando to Tampa. Major Hurricane Milton's wind field is expected to grow in size before making landfall along Florida's west coast late Wednesday night into early Thursday morning. That means impacts will be felt far away from the center of the storm. Tropical storm force winds will likely arrive Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon along Florida's west coast, reaching the east coast by Wednesday night. Milton is expected to maintain its hurricane status as it crosses the entire state, putting more people at risk for property damage and power outages. Isolated tornadoes will also be possible across central and south Florida Wednesday into Thursday as the rain bands from Milton move across the state.
Checking out the satellite, of course, we are keeping an eye on this is Milton. It's down into the southern Gulf of Mexico right now. You can see it's got a small eye. It's a smaller storm than Helene. That's good in the sense that it can't spread damage quite as wide, but bad in the sense that small storms can spin up very fast. And that's exactly what we anticipate with this one. It's going to be going into major hurricane strength. The forecast, though, is for some slight weakening just before landfall. 100-mile-per-hour winds. It is a Cat 2 storm. Moving to the east-southeast at 8 miles per hour. It's eventually going to make a northeasterly turn. You can see Category 4 strength. Some slight weakening just before landfall, but regardless, it is going to be a powerful storm when it hits the west coast of Florida. It's still a pretty wide spread with the forecast cone, and that is going to be really important for Florida. It's going to make it really challenging as well for the evacuation orders here in Florida, trying to figure out exactly who to get out of the way, because wherever this makes landfall, obviously the storm surge is going to be epic and they are going to want to get folks out, but it's going to be a pretty wide area and it's going to be very difficult to figure out exactly where to post those evacuations. So that is what they are going through today in Florida. It's going to be a very bad situation for them. Once again, though, for us, we're not going to be impacted by this. We're going to have beautiful weather this week. I have a front pushing on down, and we're going to be on the other side of the front. There is the storm. This is the Graph IBM model. This one has done a very good job with the last few hurricanes of tracking where exactly they make landfall. This one's actually done better than some of the other models, so this is why I'm going to be showing this one a lot. There it is. This is midnight going into early Thursday morning, and here's Tampa Bay, and you can see the storm making basically a beeline for near Tampa Bay. Even if a slight push to the south of Tampa Bay would save Tampa Bay from the worst of the impacts, but obviously a direct hit or something just to the north of it would give them massive storm surge in and around Tampa Bay, and obviously that is a huge population center, and they have never experienced a major, well, at least it's been more than 100 years since they've experienced the landfall of a major hurricane in the Tampa Bay area. They've been brushed a lot of times, been a lot of close calls, but they haven't had a direct hit in more than 100 years. And there it is. It's not, like I said, not as big as Helene, but big enough to cause major issues along the west coast of Florida. So here's that spread in the models. Like I said, it's a pretty wide spread, and boy, that is going to be really important for the folks here along the west coast, which one of those exact tracks plays out. So we still have some uncertainties in the modeling here, basically because of the timing of the cold front that we're going to have coming through our area. Only impacts that we see: high rip current risk next several days. If we can keep folks out of the water, we will be doing good. There's the cool front that's providing us the protection. It's north of us right now, so we're pretty warm today, but things cool off a little bit in the coming days. So we still get near 90 this afternoon, mostly sunny skies. It really turns out to be a nice day for us, just a bit on the hot side across our area. Then look what happens in the coming days: mid 80s, low 60s in the morning. And then later in the week, we get even a little bit cooler as we drop off in lower 80s. But you can see for us, no rain, lots of sun, really beautiful conditions, kind of a transition here between summer and fall as we see our temperatures gradually cooling off in the coming days and looking really, really nice.
What is it that's steering Milton on its eastward track directly towards Florida? Well, for the most part, it's the upper level winds. And while those winds are relatively light right now over Milton, we do expect those winds to pick up Milton and eventually accelerate it to the east across the Florida peninsula. But there's another factor as well, which will keep Milton from moving as far north as, say, Helene did. And it's this stalled out frontal boundary. That'll keep Milton from nudging farther to the north. And on this eastward track, you may think that's a little bit odd, considering most of the Atlantic hurricanes move from east to west. Those are steered by the Bermuda High, and in the Gulf of Mexico, Milton is not feeling the effects.
Milton is a dangerous Category 4 hurricane just north of the Yucatan Peninsula. Even though Milton is forecast to slightly come down in intensity over the next few days, it does not lessen the impacts, as a major hurricane will make landfall along Florida's west coast late Wednesday night into early Thursday morning. Milton's wind field is expected to grow in size, so impacts will be felt well outside the cone. That is why watches and warnings are in effect for almost the entire state of Florida and some of the southeast coast. Outer rain bands from Milton will move in Tuesday night, and tropical storm force winds could arrive as early as Wednesday morning along Florida's west coast. So Tuesday is the last day to prepare. Heavy rain will lead to flash flooding, with the highest flood risk just north of where the storm makes landfall.
Looking in, here is the 3D satellite. The 3D really gives us a good look. I like to see this as a meteorologist, taking a look at these 3D imagery, just because it kind of helps really see like what's happening in the structure of the storm. And what we've seen overnight last night was a pinhole eye form. In other words, a very small eye. Now, because the storm has a small eye doesn't mean it's weak. In fact, it means the opposite. It means it's really wrapping up, and we're seeing some very strong winds. It had a 9 millibar pressure drop in 1 hour. That is incredibly fast, rapid intensification with this system. So this is an ugly one, folks, and it's going to be tracking its way eastward across the Gulf of Mexico and headed for a west coast of Florida landfall. Oh boy, they just updated this. Just so we're getting intermediate updates from this. And this one I just saw this one just came in. Now up to 150 mile per hour winds. Now a Category 4 storm, another major pressure drop. So every time the hurricane hunters go in there and they fly around, they just keep finding this thing just rapidly. This is intensifying at a rate that I don't know if we've quite seen before. I'm going to have to go back and kind of look into that, because this one has really intensified overnight last night and into this morning. 150 mile per hour winds, only a few miles an hour away from being a Category 5. Looks to be almost certain to be a Category 5 strength. We'll get a new update here on this forecast path soon, too, as well. You can see they have it listed as a Category 4 for the next, day and a half, but obviously it's going to be doing some fluctuations with its intensity as it heads over towards Florida. There is some hope of some weakening, though, before landfall, but if it's a powerful Category 5, before, just a little ways out, then it's not going to have a whole lot of time to weaken. Let's go ahead and check out one of the models. This is our IBM graph model. It's done really well with the forecast path of the last several storms. So that's why we're going to continue to show this one. This shows Thursday morning headed for a west coast of Florida landfall. Something critical to note here, what we're seeing, we've been seeing this in a lot of the modeling, is dry air getting wrapped into the storm. So that's why the Hurricane Center does have it weakening somewhat before landfall. The problem is it's probably not going to make a whole lot of difference because this storm's going to be very powerful. It's also going to be having a very large storm surge with it. Now, the storm surge is going to be probably something of historic levels here for the west coast of Florida, and it's going to be super critical exactly where it makes landfall. It goes in a little bit south of Tampa. Tampa will be spared, but other spots to the south will get hit hard. If it goes in Tampa Bay or just north of Tampa Bay is going to see a storm surge like it's never been recorded before here in this area. So once again, this is going to be obviously a terrible situation for the folks in West Florida. Basically, there's I-4. It looks like it's going to basically travel up I-4. So not only Tampa will get hit hard, but Orlando's right here. Orlando will get hit hard as well, maybe even Daytona Beach on the east side of Florida. But probably the worst of it's going to be right where it makes landfall. And here's from the National Hurricane Center. This is Tampa Bay, and that purple is 12 plus feet. We could be talking as much as 20 feet of storm surge. They had 6 feet during Helene, and that caused widespread issues. Double, triple that is easily possible with this storm. So once again, just a nightmare scenario setting up for the Tampa Bay region. High rip current risk, that's the only thing that we're going to be seeing out of this. We have a cold front dropping down. That's what's going to force that storm to the west. It can't jump over this cold front, so that's why it will not be headed into our area. There's no risk of it turning northward and heading towards us. Today we're out ahead of the front, so our temperatures are going to be pretty toasty, up near 90, but it's a sunny day, it's a pretty day, it's a quiet day here for your Monday. Quiet as well as we head into the evening, no problems here. If you got something to do after work, looks really good as we head into the evening. Here's your 7-day outlook. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to kind of glide into fall here. We're not going to see a big dip, but we are going to be seeing slightly cooler temperatures over the next few days, lower humidity. It'll feel pretty comfortable. The mornings will be just absolutely fantastic. The evenings will be fantastic. Gets a little warm in the afternoons, but still pretty nice. Lots of sunshine and dry conditions. And, once again, we'll be getting basically beautiful weather up here, while folks to our south are going to be dealing with that major hurricane making landfall.
You're within 36 hours of those conditions. So that's all it is. It's just now we're inside of that window, right? So all of Central Florida now within 36 hours. I want to show you, this is minute by minute. Every frame is 1 minute, 1 minute satellite imagery, and we're seeing a new eye starting to peek out on Hurricane Milton. It's a bit weaker this morning because it essentially built a new eye wall, collapsed the old one, and is growing in size. Look for the storm system to get stronger over the course of the day today, okay? Hurricane hunters are inside investigating, and as a matter of fact, both the United States Air Force and NOAA aircraft just punched the storm, and I'll show you, this is the wind speeds off of the Air Force Hurricane Hunter, and they found at least winds gusting to Category 5 speed, okay? So very clearly, we may already be starting an upward trek. That is forecast from the National Hurricane Center, okay? Expected to get up to 160 mile per hour winds today. Then as it starts to lift closer to Florida, it starts to feel a little bit of wind shear from a cold front north of us and weaken a little bit right up to about landfall, making landfall as a Category 3 storm with 125 mile per hour winds, crossing over Florida, more than likely around high Category 1, low Category 2 over top of the metro, and then coming off the shoreline with winds of about 80 miles an hour. So that said, today is the day to finish your preps. We have a medium confidence on our overall impacts. Tomorrow morning, any last second stuff you need to do, but after that, it's getting into storm mode because tomorrow afternoon, evening, and overnight, that's when the hurricane moves our direction. So that said, Marquise, let's talk about some of those impacts. One of the big ones is flooding.
Yes, not just across the coastline, but even inland. We'll see the opportunity for flash floods widespread all across Central Florida. In fact, every one of our counties is under this magenta shaded polygon where flooding is going to be expected. Of course, it will be more immense across our west coast here, with the storm surge possibly being uninhabitable for weeks, if not even months, when Milton does make landfall. We're talking about a storm surge that could be anywhere between 10 and 15 feet. So that's above a story, nearly 2 stories of storm surge rushing onto the coast. But here in Central Florida, we've had a saturated start to the month of October. Numerous cities are above in a surplus for rainfall accumulation. So any rain that we're dumping down on top of that could potentially lead to some flash floods. As we take a look at the timeline, I want you guys to be locked in by noontime tomorrow, because 12 hours from that could possibly be landfall. We're expecting landfall anytime between 10 o'clock on Wednesday, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. So those overnight hours, we'll see Milton come on shore, and throughout the day on Wednesday, conditions are going to ramp up, and they will be the worst overnight when the sun has already set. So here's a look. We're taking you county by county right now, and we'll continue to do so as the show goes on. But across Polk County, this is where we could see some of the fastest winds. With that new 8 o'clock advisory, we have a new track, and that does push the eye across Polk County. And inside that eye, wind speeds are going to be above Category 1 strength. Gusts could be up to 90+ miles per hour. And then on top of that, we have the rain that we talked about, which could lead to some additional flooding. 4 to 7 inches of precipitation. As you head further north, well, the rainfall could be even greater. Here's Sumter County with max gusts of 90 miles per hour, but take a look at the rain. 5 to 8 inches locally. We could have rainfall accumulation reports of 10+ inches of precipitation, so that could definitely lead to some flooding concerns. And as we head east across I-4 into Seminole County, rainfall not as significant, but still enough to produce flooding conditions. 5 to 8 inches with max gusts of 80+ miles per hour. We'll continue to take you county by county, though, coming up next time I see you.